Oh, Foxy, it's your birthday. Not for real, just for play. This is Cree Summer, and Moana Nui will be right back.
Aloha mai kako. Welcome to tonight's episode of the Moana Nui Podcast. Today's episode is entitled Pacific Island Storytellers. And I'm really excited for tonight's conversation. My name is Moana McAdams, and I'm the founder and host of the Moana Nui Podcast. So tonight we have three wonderful guests, wonderful storytellers who leverage different modes and mediums to communicate and convey the stories and the magic of our Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander cultures, peoples, traditions, places, all of the things that make us who we are. And so I'm honored to have them with us. Two of our guests have been with us before, and one is new to our podcast, but hopefully not new to you guys, because he also has a wonderful YouTube channel that you all should be checking out, A Perez Voyages, and we're gonna get to talk to him a little bit. So we'll start off with Anthony Perez. He is a traveling content creator. He's living his best life. He's living my best life. He is currently traveling throughout the Pacific Islands, throughout Oceania. But he left his job, left the average 9 to 5, living in South Carolina to travel the world. He originally spent 6 incredible months in Southern Europe and ended up becoming a traveling nomad. 8 years later, he's still exploring. At the time of this writing, it was 39 countries, but I think he's more than that now, based on what I've seen him do in over the last couple months. But his goal is to observe, listen, learn, and respectfully share all of the beautiful elements of the world, from the beautiful destinations to the beautiful culture immersion from the people who are indigenous to those places. So we want to welcome Anthony Perez to the show. Aloha. Alrighty, next we have Paki Perkins. He is a native Hawaiian from Kaneohe, Oahu. He is a children's book author, along with his 3 keiki, which I really love that. Their first books was entitled Mahalo Ohana. Well, that was the name of the series, where they highlight the Hawaiian values of mahalo, aloha, and ohana. We talked about that a little bit in our Ohana series earlier this year in February. But he has so much great ike and mana'o. He really touched me in that episode. A lot of what we talked about still like resonates and is sitting in the back of my mind. So I'm happy to have him back, so he can continue to share his stories with us tonight. So aloha, Paki.
Aloha.
And then last but certainly not least, Kavika Hoke has been with us before. He is a filmmaker and marketing analyst, and he is the powerhouse behind the new Moku Moku TV series, which is awesome. It is Hawaii based, Hawaii produced. And his goal has always been to change the way indie films do business by challenging the norms that have maintained the status quo of Hollywood, which I love that. His goal is to educate and push indie filmmakers to keep ownership of their films, distribute and connect with their audience personally and on their own terms. And recently, Moku Moku was added to Amazon Prime, so it is now accessible to everyone wherever you are for only $4.99 for the first season. So if you haven't already purchased it, please do. All of the support really helps them to gain the followership and the traction that they need to continue filming season 2. So I'm gonna welcome Kavika to the show. Aloha, brother.
Aloha.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Um, And then one more thing that I forgot to add, before I brought you guys on, I want to mahalo Papa Ola Lōkahi for continuing to recognize our community and clearing the way so we can fuel our passions and continue the work. Um, having their funding has really helped us to focus on the people, the content, and the stories, and not have to worry about how we're going to make it all happen. And so, mahalo nui to Sherry and her team for all of the work they do for our Native Hawaiian community, but also our Pacific Islander cousins who are also involved in helping to make this work happen too. So, okay, so tonight's episode entitled Pacific Islander Storytellers. Which of course I love this because I've always said from the beginning when I first started this podcast, we are a storytelling podcast. And so, stories or mo'olelo as we call them in Hawaii, they're really central to Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander culture and identity. They connect us to our genealogy, our mo'oku auhau, our place, to one another, to our community, and to the natural and spiritual world that is all around us. And so there are so many different ways to tell stories through hula, oli, chants, music, mele, podcasts, books, art, film, and so much more. And so tonight, our guests are working within the film and literature spaces. And even Paki is also a speaker. So he tells his stories in different platforms, different audiences, in the corporate and business community, and connects to audiences there. So we want to welcome that. So I think the first question I want to start with is, the Pico, right? Like telling us a little bit about your background and how it has influenced your storytelling. I want to start with Anthony because he's the newest person to the podcast and want to give him that honor. So mahalo, Anthony.
Once again, mahalo for having me. It's definitely an honor and a blessing to be amongst you guys, Moana, especially on your podcast. I've heard great things, so mahalo. Where to start? So, as far as my background and how storytelling has blossomed into what it is, currently I call myself a cultural content creator based in storytelling. My journey into this is evolved in so many ways. I've always had an eye for capturing things, whether it's through photography and videography, but it all started in 2016 when I ventured out to Europe on a 6-month journey. I just had an iPhone 5S and an old GoPro, and I journeyed, learned all the ways of just being an innocent traveler. But as I journeyed on, especially in Greece, it was capturing the beauty, the beautiful hues of blue and whites in Greece, and also telling my story through Greece, through voiceover and in-person narration. And when the time came to edit, I realized in some of the narration that I had a knack for storytelling. Now, I've tried different things. I've tried the influencer side of things. I tried the best speeches, best places to eat, blogging along the way. And the one thing I learned is that's not me. So it was timing in that journey, in that learning journey, that allowed me to really appreciate deeper things, which is where I am today. And it wasn't until a year spent in Aotearoa where, again, I tried the vlog thing. It wasn't really where my heart was at, where I kind of refocused my attention into how I'd like to document, maybe taking a hint of vlogging, but bringing storytelling to the table. And that was in 2018 on my very first Pacific Island trip. I ventured to Tonga, to Fiji, to Tuvalu, Kiribati, Nauru, Marshall Islands, and eventually back to Hawaii, where I would spend 4 years. In that gap in time from 2018 to about last year, gave me the realization of where my passions lie. It was, of course, realizing storytelling. It was upping the ante with some film making aesthetics, with some cinematic touch to what I was doing. It was being intentional in everything that I was doing, while also staying rooted as a passionate traveler, curious traveler. And aligned with that was the raw, genuine people of the Pacific that I was spending the time with. So you have all these different things coming together in this journey, in the spiritual journey in the Pacific that has blossomed into who I am today. Now, granted, I will sprinkle in there. My time in Hawaii was a little longer than I anticipated, but all for the great reasons, thanks to the pandemic, where I rooted myself in Hawaii for 4 years, danced hula, and explored all the different elements of Hawaii, which brought the cultural sensitivity, respect, and values as that Kanaka Maoli have into my travels and into my life. So to wrap up the answer to that question or to that story, here I am now in American Samoa on a Grand Pacific trip that I titled One Ocean, One People, that is taking curious voyaging, respectful voyaging, and filmmaking all in one. And storytelling has taken a whole new height. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, every time you list off the places, I was like, I'm so jealous. One day, but I
One day.
love that you're doing this work because, for us who cannot be there, it helps us to learn more about the people and the place and see it up close through the eyes of not just the typical tourist, like you said, like the best places to eat. I mean, like, of course, we want to eat, we want to do that. But when I travel, I want to be closer to the people who are from the place, and see how they live and, connect with them in that way, not just go to a hotel to, go, this is the new destination or whatever. Like anybody can do that anywhere. What makes
Yeah.
this place special? Yeah. And so Kavika, I know you can relate to this, as a filmmaker yourself, not just with Moku Moku, but in your background and career in filmmaking and media. How about you? How does your background influence your storytelling?
Well, being just like I always call myself a time capsule kid of the diaspora, just because like raised by grandparents on the road, always, you know, and so it really just I'd always been connected to my past, but never like locked into the formal sense of tradition because it's a life you take on the road with you, so you love the pieces that you're taught, and you go along your way, and so I feel that especially with television and film, we get to enter that conversation of evolution versus tradition a lot more than some other arts do. Like, I mean, you kind of have a safe space in public speaking and storytelling, basic storytelling to a degree. Not saying that it's basic in that sense, but the second that you enter a sphere of just a little bit of commercialism gets in the way, and you have to tie it up differently in order to get the whole world's attention. Like, if you want to ride that hurricane and make the whole world pay attention to what your people mean for a minute, it's not that you have to make a compromise, but you have to code switch for 9 billion people, to make them all receive it at once. So it's not that you're disregarding tradition to entertain people, but you're finding like what's that B or C average common ground that everybody matches on, and then we feed from there, and then we can go back to tradition after we've established how to break that barrier.
Yeah, I find that to be true. Especially now as I'm working on Disney IP with the Lilo and Stitch series. Oh boy, that's a constant challenge because everything I want to do, everything my Na'au is telling me to do, is the stuff that they want to take out. I'm like,
and just imagine in 20 years you can be like Christy Carlson Romano, and we like post NDA, we can have all the stories about like, so Moana, tell us all of the cool radical Kanaka things you wanted Lilo and Stitch to do, but they were like, that might scare the snowflakes.
It's funny that you say that because I was just talking to someone last night and they were like, you need to write an autobiography, like put all the stories that like you wanted to tell, but you couldn't tell it the way you wanted to. Because there's people who's are gonna want to want to read that too. But I do find that to be true. So, Paki, I know with you, in your work, both as a children's book author and as a speaker, you often have to find that common ground in those audiences and platforms that you navigate. How about you? How do you leverage your background and as a Kanaka, to convey your storytelling, and to influence those audiences?
So I was born and raised in Kaneohe, in the moko of Kolaupoko on the island of Oahu. And my ancestors and my lineage is deeply rooted into these lands, right? And, I'm Hawaiian, Chinese, Japanese, English, Irish, Portuguese, right? That's just who I am. I mean, I'm a mutt, chop suey, right? But the Portuguese side is the part that has allowed me to speak in a way that connects, because I'm Hawaiian, so everybody loves Hawaii, everybody loves Hawaiians, but I'm Portuguese, and everybody just laughs at the Portuguese. So I mean, I feel like I got the best of both worlds, because everybody is either in love with me or they're laughing at me, and either way, they just want to be close to me, right? So in my household, it was always like stories was everything for us, right? Everything from genealogy and ancestry to legends and stories about our aumakua and ohana to jokes, from the Portuguese side, right? So this was always a part of who I was. And then as I, got into adulthood and my profession, the interesting part is when I was in high school at Kamehameha, I was a DJ. I was a disc jockey. And, that made me comfortable in front of the microphone. So I was able to take my ability to speak on a microphone and get the attention of the audience and weave in this ability to tell stories from the Portuguese side to be able to talk about the cultural aspects of who we are. And literally just earlier today, I was, on a work webinar where I was presenting, and we had somebody from Department of Energy, from Idaho National Labs, talking about Native American work within renewable energy. That's the industry in, and I get to speak about Native Hawaiians and our need for resilience in Native, in the Native world for energy, water, resiliency, all this stuff. So I just feel really blessed to be able to bring my work and my culture together in one.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's always nice when you can find that alignment in your work. So let's talk a little bit about the creative process. How do you engage the Pacific Islander community within it? And then, how do you weave in the different narratives into your work? Kavika, let's start with you.
Well, I am the sky is falling militant Hawaiian, so I'm usually shaking everybody, going, guys, the apocalypse is here. But I can't do that all the time, so I tend to use comedy and science fiction as my release for that. And I feel that those are like the easiest ways to talk about our biggest problems. I mean, like when you really see what like boots on the ground Hawaii is dealing with versus diaspora Hawaii, depending on which country they're in, like there's just so much to unpack that like we were doom scrolling in the coconut wireless before it included smartphones, So so how like I've just found myself at a place of how can you inform as much as possible without like making them lose it, without making them, how did they still get some mana'o? How do they take away something? How do they want to change the world around them or be a better person, even if it's flipping a page in a comic book or watching a silly story on TV or catching us all on a podcast?
Wonderful. I definitely appreciate the comedy thing because some topics are so heavy that you have to make it light. Otherwise, it's depressing as hell.
Yep, that's why like I thought for the longest time I was gonna be like one of those Spike Lee type of guys, but then I realized like I had to be like also one part Weird Al or no one was gonna take it at all. So like just how do you how can you be the fool and be the wise man without bringing everybody down? So I'm just trying to figure out that fine line between like telling a good story and not being a wet blanket.
Yes. I think that's a balance. I would be curious if if the rest of you experience that as well, because I know I do. Like I tend to be like the serious one. And then my husband's like, "Why are you being such a wet blanket?" I'm like, "But it's a serious issue. They need to know about this." Even like when I write my kids' books too, I'm like, "Okay, I need to lighten this up. It's for kids." What are your thoughts on this, Anthony?
Okay, what was that?
You are muted.
Sorry. Yeah, you muted.
Sorry.
It's
How
okay.
do you incorporate traditional Pacific Islander themes and narratives into your work, and how do you engage the community in your creative process?
I had to reformat the question in my head because it's a long answer. So firstly, for everybody tuning in, for you guys, I am not Pacific Islander. As I told many people, I am from an island, just not this side of the world. So with that being said, it's I am not of these places, so I come in with a lot of respect, but I also come in with the baby brain. I come in with a curious mind to learn. And with that being said, it all starts off with the innocence of just simple voyaging. I'm coming into these places with having done computer research, looking on the phone, but it's all really immersing into people, whoever I meet. So the innocence of the journey starts with just that, where I meet people who are knowledgeable in language or people who are knowledgeable in certain ceremonious events, ava, certain protocols here. How I engage is usually revolved around that. And when it comes to the documentation, it's usually implied that I'm documenting along the way, but I've actually set boundaries between the two. And I have to do that for myself because I'm not here as a filmmaker or a content creator. I'm here as a voyager, but along the ways are the tools. And most of the time, from experience and from what people tell me, because I don't make the judgment on my own. I base it on observation. Just about most people are 100% on board with engaging with the creative process on my side because they see that I'm not only passionate to learn, but I'm passionate to learn in a respectful and sustainable way that usually entails telling and sharing narratives directly through the source, and it's the people that I'm with. And that was especially so in Hawaii, where I really saw like I got this, with Kanaka Maoli. It was their story through my documentary Living Like a Hawaiian. It wasn't me telling anybody's story there. It was me telling the story of my journey through them. It was my journey of what I learned through them, but it wasn't me stepping on anybody's toes and stepping in front of Kanaka. How I see it, whether it's Kanaka, Palauans, Kiribati, Fijians, I'm either standing beside them or behind them when it comes to their story. So, especially because people see the curious nature of what I do and how I voyage, it's also especially so that I'm amplifying their narrative, their stories, in a way that allows them a platform to share. In most cases, like I said, through observation, most people are willing and wanting to. Of course, there are certain things that I know aren't shareable, and those are part of the journey of me learning. Like, all right, tatao, there's a certain process that doesn't go on camera for safety reasons, or certain traditions in Micronesia that are very protected, that are almost barely shared within. So I also come in with that understanding that my documentation doesn't entitle me to things because I'm a content creator. That's just as much part of the journey. And the last thing I have to say too is that my journey also involves the lens of my own mind. It doesn't always have to be captured, and I think people appreciate that as well. So yeah, hope that answers.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, I love the way you approach your creation, because a lot of other content creators, they are trying to tell the story of the people, but they misrepresent, they just miss the mark. And so I appreciate the way you frame, and it's clear that you take care when you're creating the contents and like the things that you emphasize within it. So I think there are people who come to our places and want to tell stories about it. They could learn a lot from the way that you approach that.
And the last thing I have to add, I'm sorry, it's not easy.
I know.
It's not easy doing the right thing.
Mhm.
But it's always a blessing, and I look at the footprint that it leaves behind, because it's not only sustainable for the people I'm talking about representing, but it's also for people who are looking to do the same. That's where I'm like, I'm not a guide or an influencer, but if I'm influencing, it's other people how to come to American Samoa with respect, or to
Mhm.
Hawaii, that it's not just Waikiki, it's not just this facade. Hey, there's lo'i, or there's different things about the islands that you don't know about that's there. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Mahalo. Paki, how about you? How do you incorporate, like you incorporate your keiki, which I love that, like having, keiki telling stories from a young age and building that framework into. What are your thoughts on this topic?
It's a part of who I am, so it's actually easier and more natural to make it part of the story, right? I mean, it's actually, to me, it's more difficult to talk about stuff that I don't know, because now I got to research and actually try to understand this stuff, right? But it's easy to talk about growing up in Kaneohe and getting licked by my mother, that type of stuff. Now I have to translate that into a way that is acceptable to the audience. As far as engaging the community, the Pacific Islander community, right? I really only engage my mom. That's really it, because I make sure that it's pono, that it's right, and that I get her permission to share it. After that, I almost, it's not that I don't care about everyone else, but I work hard to make sure that whatever I am going to say is pono, right? And as this mom is able to give me her blessing, then I'm okay with facing whatever consequences come out of it if I did misspeak. So it's not a huge community. It's a very small community, but it's also a very deliberate community that's looking for not just the betterment of me as a storyteller, but also the people that I could potentially impact. So I feel blessed to have that resource.
Yeah, mahalo. You're not the first person to say that, the main folks that we have to be in alignment with is our family, our ancestors, right? Because those are the ones that we answer to, at the end of the day. And as long as it is pono and in alignment, then we should feel confident in the stories that we tell. Of course, there will be other people who have different views, but that's okay. That's their mana'o. You need to be confident in your mana'o. And that's what we, at the end of the day, I think all of us can feel confident with that, as long as our heart is in the right place. And and we feel like, yep, I know I'm gonna face whatever opposition, but I'm happy to defend it because this is our story, right? And nobody else can tell our story but us. So I really appreciate that. So with that said, though, because it is Pacific Islanders are like a small part of a global community. Like, we're celebrating NHPI month, and the NHPI is actually a minority even within this this particular group, right? Especially when we're looking at more broader platforms, right? Like I was reading, I think it was somebody's Instagram where they were kind of highlighting some examples of where Pacific Islanders are erased even in this month. So I think it was like Netflix. They highlight a couple things, and I think the one that stuck out the most to me was Target, because they carry Pacific Islander products like Papatui by The Rock and Jason Momoa's water. Kalamai, I cannot remember it right now off the top of my head. It starts with M. But thank you, Mananalu. But the fact that they couldn't even highlight those in Pacific Islander month, like these are celebrities with platforms, right? So like if even they cannot be highlighted and recognized by these brands, like there's work to do in this space. So in your particular work, doesn't have to be to this level, but what opportunities and challenges have you faced bringing your work to a wider audience, and how has the reception of your work varied amongst different audiences? Paki, maybe I'll start with you on this one.
I've been really fortunate because the work, my public work that's coming out, started with our first children's book from, with me and my keiki, and we're talking about Hawaiian values, right? We're talking about, our first book is Mahalo, talking about gratitude. Second book and third book is on, aloha, love, ohana, family. It's really hard for anybody to have negative opinions about those types of conversations, right? Especially if the story is told right. So I'm very fortunate that my story is very acceptable for whoever the audience is, and it's actually been a lot of wonderful opportunities. I wrote this specifically to make sure I taught my children Hawaiian values, right? And I didn't expect it to be able to be out there in public, but now we're putting it in a position where we've got really famous people like Steve Young, saying, hey, could you talk about, I'm writing a book on the power of love. Could you tell me about aloha and how this works, within love and this unconditional love? I mean, it was beautiful. So I'm grateful that I don't face the challenges yet. I know that it's potentially there, but whatever those challenges are, it just allows me to change my focus, to put it in a way that creates more opportunities. So, I again, my topics do not allow me to have as many challenges as probably some other topics. So all I can say is the opportunities have definitely continued to open up more and more and more for myself.
I love that for you because those topics and the way, especially the way our community approaches it, it is a very universal thing that people can relate to and resonate with. So I love that you have that success, and that other most audiences are receptive to that.
Well, and I mean, I'm sorry to go off on this part right here, but when I asked my children, because my children are co-authors, and I actually had my children, I literally said, here's your budget. You're going to start your own publishing company and publish this book and do all this stuff, right? And I asked them, I was like, are we publishing this book to make money, or what? What's our goal? And my children specifically said, no, we don't care about making money. We want everybody to know Mahalo Hana, Mahalo Aloha Ohana. So we talked about, like, I'm a business guy. So I'm like, okay, here, what's our business plan? What's our business model? And they said, once we finish all three of these books, Mahalo Aloha Ohana, their goal is to get it onto. And I asked them, like, how are we going to get this in front of everybody? And this is what they said. We need to get these books on Hawaiian Airlines so that every person flying in and out of Hawaii will be able to have these books. And I was like, really? Why is that? They're like, Dad, come on. Everybody coming to Hawaii needs to learn the values of gratitude, love, and family. Can you imagine the type of tourists that we will have? They're no longer tourists, they're visitors that understand our culture and our values. They're like, Dad, this needs to be on every flight coming and going and every ABC store. She's like, my children are like, every grandma going to buy 20 books for their grandchildren when they go back. And I'm like, wow, for somebody that said you don't like money, this buggy is really thinking about the money. I was like, baby, you are my child, But I say this because, again, I'm fortunate that our topic is something that is very, endearing. And I think from there, we can continue to add on to that rather than just Mahalo Hamna. We can expand into other Hawaiian values and ways that it could help people's lives. So sorry to add so much, but, I feel like that's something that's important for us all, right? To look at those challenges. How do you get these books onto every Hawaiian Airlines flight? It's a budget issue, but it's also a good, opportunity for us to create better visitors to the islands.
No, I love that. And the clarity of that goal is amazing. Like, knowing what your end goal is really important. So I'm glad you asked them that question. Like, what is the purpose? Because the same thing for me too, like, obviously you need money to keep it sustainable. But like for me, my end goal is to put these books into the schools, and that's so that our keiki have these resources and have accessibility to the language piece, of it, especially for a language that was almost, totally eliminated. So I love that. Anthony, how about you?
So my answer is going to be quite lengthy. So Kalamai, if it seems like a very stretchy kind of answer, I thought about it. I was like, does that really? But no, it actually all connects. The answer to challenges and regards to a wider audience is my biggest challenge currently is honestly funding. I am currently self-funded and donation-based. I've been trying to seek sponsors. I've applied to many grants for what I do, and I've run through some issues. The reason why I mention that is because outside of the grants and the sponsorships is I could probably be thriving if I appealed to a massive audience, but I'm not trying to. And I know that might sound strange because, when you're in this kind of line of work as a content creator, you would think that you're like, oh, this is American Samoa, outside world, but I'm really not. And the reason why that matters is because if I was appealing to a wider audience, and when I say wider audience, I'm talking about Americans, Europeans, Africans, people around the world, I feel like that would have, or I wouldn't say feel, I know that would have a massive impact on the innocence and genuine nature, rooted nature of how I step in these places. If I'm coming as a content creator that's appealing to a wide audience, there's a thing I have to do for them. And I'm not really actually doing what I'm doing here, at least in the Pacific, for them. They're invited. And if they're interested in learning about these places, I invite them. Especially as an outsider, they have someone to resonate with. I'm like the bridge. But my audience is the Pacific Island communities I'm with. My Kanaka Maoli project was for Kanaka Maoli. And through the testimonials, Kanaka Maoli had a lot of beautiful things to say because it was for them. And everybody that was not Kanaka, tourists especially, I've seen people who want to go to Hawaii, was an eye-opener. And that was exactly an intention fulfilled. It's the same here in American Samoa. I'm working on a documentary that's slowly turning into one as it progresses. But it's for Samoans here, and it is for Samoans in these islands as a collective, which is it's a topic of conversation that can go both ways. But my projects are for the smaller audience. And it comes at the cost of, exposure. It may come at the cost of certain funding opportunities because it's not reaching certain resources out there, but I'm okay with that. So the challenges I would say is that, but I also don't see them as challenges because it keeps what I do rooted. with intention, and it keeps it full of aloha, and it keeps it in the cycle of respect that everybody sees. And when I do put out projects, whether it's shorts or documentaries, it's felt very strong. So, and in the second part of the question, the reception of my work, again, going back to it, it has been felt because it is rooted in passion and is rooted in authenticity, but is also rooted in what's correct in a way that's told to the people that I'm with. So.
Mahalo. Yeah, that's wonderful. Kavika, welcome your thoughts on this. I know you have lots of mana'o.
Yeah, I'll start in reverse. I mean, reception wise, like, you know, folks are happy when they see something that's more of a reflection of themselves, you know. So as we've continued to merge out of the Hollywood format and into our own, like, that there's been plenty of support. People really have to detach the idea that Hollywood's attached because production value is where it is. There's been a lot of folks that think that because we're licensed to Amazon, that means that Amazon bought it and they produce it now, and we've all become rich, which they don't know what the difference between licensing and, you know. So you have to explain that sometimes, and they go, oh, okay, I will buy it, Rock, because then I know the money's going to you, not Jeff Bezos, you know. And so that kind of gets in its way when you're just a little too big for your britches, but that's what your job is supposed to be. But I mean, I think to the audience growth factor in the conversation is there are millions of us, you know, Polynesians, Asian Americans, Asians at large, people who love Asians, people who love Polynesians, people who wish they were Polynesians. I mean, it's hundreds of millions of people. And we kind of forfeit ourselves to the idea that we have these humble audiences that we're supposed to have of just like 4,000, 5,000 people. I've been having this conversation regularly for the past 6 years with Polynesian influencers specifically. And what we've all come to gather is that there's one last part of the equation that people forget about when operating in social media, is that it needs geographic reach to spread further than its primary viral sector. So, like, case in point, in Hawaii, at best, you're going to get 3,000 to 6,000 followers, because those are all the best social butterflies of the internet in Hawaii that are geographically together, that all talk story and mind and bird together. And then what happens is the rest of us, we live in Poughkeepsie, Illinois, we live in Henderson, Nevada, and then when you separate a community, it makes, it was such a funny thing to figure out when I was talking to another Hawaiian while I was in Santa Fe Springs last weekend. You know, our grandparents, our kupuna, would get on the phone at dark 30 in the morning after making coffee, and they call their sister, they call their uncle, they call their grandmother, they call East Coast, they call West Coast, they call across the date line. And by the time lunch is served and you're having, you know, your lunch with Tutu, she's like, oh, you know, I went and talked to Shanette today, and she said da 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 da. And the next thing you know, you go down the list. But in this age of social media, we're disconnected by the algorithm, because the algorithm not only says you have to define yourselves by these pop culture things, you're also defined by government status, how you vote, all these certain things that we throw aside as a Hawaiian culture, because you stuck with who you stuck with on an island, you know, you don't like it. Guess what? You get your uncle forever. Even when he's gone, he's gonna haunt you one day. You know? And so we don't connect with all of those people enough anymore. And I found that really the biggest thing to break us past that maneuver is getting that time to go out and find out where everybody is. That's why, like, I'm looking forward to like every ho'olauea I'm going to this summer, and every small event. Like tomorrow, I'm going to be in Chula Vista. A couple weeks, I'll see Michelle them in Los Angeles. And I think it's really important for us, in order to get out of that digital geofence that this biased algorithm has put on us, because it says, oh, you only get 4,000 Hawaiians who are gonna like you. But it's like, bruh, okay, so since the 80s, we all left, we all got better jobs, we all went Vegas, like everybody went sprout up like rabbits. So you're telling me there's only 4,000 Canucks left when we got like 12 million on the West Coast, you know? And then we got to be happy with it, while also fighting against an algorithm that's being bought and sold around us with data that doesn't incorporate us. I mean, how long until Olelo was included, in an iPhone? You know, that's really the only reason why I know my dates, how to tell the time, and how, like, I'm so detached from my culture because of these simple things that just aren't instituted for us. And so I think if we put the time in to make sure they're there for each other, they connect us correctly, and we hold each other's hands every once in a while instead of just asking for a like or a follow.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think in this modern day, social media, all this stuff with the algorithms, I think we forget about the power of the coconut wireless, right? Like that's how our community has stayed connected and we maintain those strong relationships is with the coconut wireless. But now everybody like, text me or I mean, I do that too. I'm guilty, right? Like just text me. But it is those strong connections, like one-on-one. Forget the algorithm, like it's so annoying. I'm like, I got on this platform to connect with my people, and then here comes this algorithm telling me, whatever, this
Yeah,
ad.
it's like you got to post at 5:30 a.m. if you want anybody to read you, and you got to post 6 times a day and all these things. And it's like, why should I hop through all these hoops when I could just go get malasadas at the LA Ho'olalea and
go see
20 Canucks and 30 Uses are all going to be there, and I'll be signing autographs all day. So that's what.
Yeah, for me it's like oh, you have to choose what's trending as like watch me pick my own song, and I'm gonna walk away, and that's exactly what I do.
It is so true. I can't remember. So like in our ARGs, right? Like our employee ARG, I'm like, if you want to develop relationship with our community, if you want to connect with our community, genuinely come to our cultural events. Like you're not gonna find us at a college community fair. You might find a couple of us, but if you want the concentration, you need to come to our cultural events because that's where we are. That's where we unite. That's where we're hanging out. But we can smell when you're being ingenuine. So, come with aloha, like everything, just like when you come to Hawaii, come with aloha, come with respect, come to learn and enjoy our culture because we will gladly share it with you if you come in a pono way. 100%. Let's see. Okay, I like this one. So, next question. In what ways do we see representation of Pacific Islanders evolving in mainstream media or just in the future? Like what are your wishes for our community? How can we help one another to help, to learn more about projects, to spotlight them, to raise attention because the algorithms are not our friend? What are some ways and what are some things you would love to see happen in the future? Paki, let's start with you.
This one is, I mean, I've been fortunate to be a part of so many different media scenarios as a Hawaiian, and I think the representation within the mainstream media really is evolving in several positive ways, right? And some of I think the potential future developments really, come with increased visibility, right? To be able to have diverse storylines that's using, more complex characters, right? I mean, it's not just, the white person or the Chinese person. It's the Hawaiian, Chinese, Japanese, English, Irish, Portuguese person. You know what I mean? That type of stuff, right? So the complexities of having that diversity, right? Varied genres, right? I mean, growing up, like, I had Chokma who's all around me, so why is it now all of a sudden that we can actually talk about these types of things? Like that was part of all life, right? Having them sit in leading roles. I mean, to be able to have the Jason Momoas and Dwayne Johnsons being there, it shows that our people can do that. And then having real authentic representations, right? That's to me, that's also really important because now we're bringing this cultural accuracy, right? I see more and more of these mainstream companies employing our cultural, advocates and being able to have cultural consultants. I mean, come on, look at Disney in Hawaii, right? I mean, I know the people that was sitting there with Disney, and saying this is what Aulani is going to look like, and they did a good job, by bringing that in. So I think as we bring in more, indigenous creators, and being able to allow us to do, like, let's say what Kavika is doing and take ownership of the narratives, it'll continue to give us, more authentic representation, the broader reach. There's so much more opportunities with streaming services, to social media, to all these digital platforms, right? And then the representation within these various media forms, everything from literature and publishing to to film, television, music. I mean, come on, we've been dancing hula in Japan forever, right? I mean, that is something that is a true example of how our arts and understanding of our culture can be spread out. But the one that I'm most excited about is educational initiatives, right? That right there is the most important thing for me, because I was reached out by one of the biggest names in academia that was saying, AJ, would you be willing to retell the story of Maui? Why? Like, why I gotta retell that story for? But I get it, because the way that the children listen to us today is different than the way it was before. So when I first heard that, I was like, no, why the heck would I do that? Like, I don't want to be the guy that is retelling Maui, and then they're like, no, this is for third graders and this is blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, thank you for asking, right? Forget about all the negativity. Is I got to look at this and say, how can I turn this to an advantage for us? And sure enough, I'm like, we got this, and what that one project for one story for one grade turned into that big company saying, can we work with you on an entire curriculum for blah, blah, and I'm just like, wow. Can you imagine if we now have the ability to teach our keiki as well as keiki from around the world, because we are able to tell stories in a way that connects with them, that's accurate, that's representative of who they are and who they'd like to be. So, I respect what Kavika and Anthony are doing, because that's not what I do. But I think it's all blended together, right? I think it's all blended together, and it's important for us to, lift each other up. All boats rise with the tide.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, from the educational perspective, like that's what, my passion is too. Because like the keiki is the future, and so we have to think about different ways to relate to them and get them to see the message. And like in your project, the retelling of a story, because every generation receives information differently. Whether it's like understanding the cultural nuances, or like how they're relating to like the peers of that generation, and how they tell the story. But it's still very like universal messages. The needs are still there. It's just changing the framework just a little bit. So I love that. Book nerd here. So Anthony, what are your thoughts on this one? Where do you want this mainstream media, or even just the future of what you're doing? How can we inspire more future young documentary filmmakers, and really encourage them to embrace their voice, and do those projects and initiatives that they want?
I love the initial question as well as the evolved question, and another long one, because it goes along with the intention of what I do. But talking about the representation of Pacific Islanders, look, I've only been in this side of the world for 7 years. I didn't know about half of the places up until coming to this side of the world. But in the time that I've been here, I have seen a massive evolution of awareness, not just in Pacific Island culture and people, but indigenous. And I am all for it. And I will have to say, I have my gripes about social media. We're talking about algorithms. We're talking about certain things. I think there's some dark sides of social media, but I will say there's a lot of light, and a lot of light has come. I'll add TikTok in there. Through the pandemic, it has really brought out the voices of people who have been misheard, misrepresented, or lack thereof for a long time. I've seen people, Cree Nation. I've seen Kanaka Maoli, which is how I met so many people. I've seen a lot of Maori culture represented. I've seen a lot of indigenous Mexico culture represented. I've seen indigenous Siberia. So with that being said, for the Pacific, the beautiful thing is that I've not only seen people speak up and show who they are, but I've also, and it's kind of rough to say that I've seen a lot of backlash or cultural appropriation, but I've noticed a lot of people pay attention to it. I notice a lot of people are careful and cautious, and they question before they do, wearing a grass skirt, or making generalizations about Hawaii in their eyes when they're like, oh, there's actually Hawaiians there, or they don't like just certain conversations are being had because the light is being shone on this side of the world. These are not just white sand beaches and nice weather islands. There are people that call these islands home. And that's part of what I document. That's part of what I respect and value and try to emanate in my storytelling. Part of the intention, too, is that this is a cycle. You got ancestors and you got future generations and you have the current. Part of my intention in what I do is cultivating what has existed for so many thousands of years, how it exists now, and how I can elevate it to the next generation, to the generation that are currently on these islands who are severely affected by westernization, colonization, the diminishing of local languages. And again, like what you said earlier, is bringing to light the importance of culture and retaining that, being grounded in that. I feel like that I've done very well to establish a platform that helps to bring that to life. So a lot of my intention is for different things, but it's primarily for the next generation. And so far, I've been blessed to say, from what I've been told, I've been doing it very well. And it makes me extremely happy and blessed and humbled. So.
Mahalo. I appreciate all that you do, and I'm definitely one of those that are just just huge mahalo for all that you do, and not just obviously Kanaka community, but all of our Pacific Islanders. Because I know for myself, like, I definitely want to amplify our lesser known Pacific Islander communities, and so I love that you have, through your series, you're able to do that, and contribute to a broader understanding for those people as well. Okay, Kavika, last person on this one. How do you see our future?
Two big things: intellectual and digital sovereignty. Especially from the perspective of TV and film, Hollywood and corporate television and media is falling back to the TV model. It's all slinking away from what we know is the streaming method. And as an executive producer who's seen behind enough curtains, I can tell you my wild 30-year theory of, like, keep it all for yourself, don't give in to Hollywood, it's all a scam, still is a scam, guys. So keep it all for yourself, because they'll only give you a nickel for your thoughts and try to make you okay with it. So the first thing is your heritage. It's also your kuleana to protect it like any other IP. So for those of us as artists who understand what that means, intellectual property, like in the modern age of business, we have to, it is our kuleana to protect the intellectual property that is our heritage and keep it free from control of the corporatocracy, of colonial mindset, of all these things that could turn it back into grass skirts and drug dealers on Hawaii 5-0. So for me, really, it's how far can we teach our kids to get ahead? How can we build equity for the next generation of creators? How can we bankroll them, So for guys like me that can go find someone who's crazy enough to give us $1 million, how do I fit in another $20,000 so someone else can go shoot a podcast or something alongside it? So that way these other things are happening, and at the behest of people who want to let them autonomously create and tell these stories instead of censoring it. Because, I mean, we still have to, even if we go to PBS can still censor you in this day and age. People don't understand that. I know 3 Kanaka documentaries that have been released in the past 25 years, and there are 2 different cuts. There is the Colonizer PBS cut, and then there is the What Went to Festival cut. Okay. And if you do enough digging, you'll find that throughout the rest of Hollywood history is every time is, oh, scale it back a bit. You might scare the white people a little bit. And it's like, sorry, sister, they kind of scared us with a gun to our head and all these other things for 100 years. So you can deal with your imperfect feeling for 20 seconds while we sass you the business. And so I mean that sovereignty really starts with asserting it's our stories, it's told on our terms, and we own them. And we should be proud of owning them instead of thinking, oh, I need Amazon Prime. I don't need Amazon Prime. Amazon doesn't pay me any better than Vimeo. Either way, it's a license deal. So please go buy it off 808 Moku Moku, because all that money goes back to Makawao, like I said earlier, and how do you take care of that, and how do you own that for your own people? One of the big things that I've realized getting deeper into the broadcasting world is how cheap television space is. And I'm talking like you'd never guess how cheap, to the point to where you kids out there in TV land or podcast land, listening, watching, twitching, whatever, go out and find out how cheap it is to own an hour of television in your neighborhood and start buying it and putting your YouTube show on there, because then the Hollies will take you seriously because they see you on TV, and that's all they need. And that's why I'm buying out 6 hours of syndicated space on Channel 6 this fall and next year with season 2. Because in that way, investors will see it. And then we own space that they don't want. They selling it away for dirt cheap. So go get it and hold on to it for forever. Because, and just have tons of Kanaka babies and just keep handing off that IP down the line and those time slots and those books and that mana'o.
Oh my God, I love that. Kavika just dropped game. I gotta talk story after this. I love it. And yeah, that's a lot to think about, especially when we talk about generational wealth, which is often lacking. We just need to change the way that we think about it, and that it's okay. Like, it's about providing for our next generation, and in fact, like, getting ourselves in the place where we do have wealth, so we can go back home and be where we're supposed to be in the first place, right? Like, thinking about those things. I mean, for some of us, we may be on the continent and we have our purpose here, right? Like, it's just a different platform, different types of opportunities. But as long as we are keeping our community at the forefront and the focus, of our efforts and the betterment of that, I think, it doesn't really matter where we are, because I can't remember who said it, but I can't remember if it was a guest or just a friend that I know. They essentially said, like, if you want to go to Hawaii, do you know Hawaiian? Yeah, then you went to Hawaii, because Hawaii goes with us, right? Like, we Hawaiians are what make Hawaii Hawaii. If you displace us, right, like, it's not going to be, I mean, it's going to be Hawaii in name, but it's not really going to be Hawaii, right? And so I just, I just want to remind us of that, and regardless of where we are, that, our community is our focus. And continuing to help each other find ways for us to, navigate and survive, and thrive. Not just survive now, thrive in these spaces. And like you said, Kavika, it all goes back to sovereignty, right? So sovereignty in so many different facets of our life. So with that said, it looks like we hit our hour. Before we end our broadcast tonight, please let's go around and let people know where they can find you, so that we can get folks to know more about your work and support what you are doing. Anthony, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so mahalo nui, Moana. First and foremost, thank you for everybody tuning in. That's live or post. My YouTube, TikTok, Instagram name is A Perez Voyages. I also would like to put out, since I said earlier, currently self-funded and donation-based. Anybody willing to help fund and support my documentation efforts through One Ocean One People can find my GoFundMe link within my Instagram as well as TikTok. Any support, all funds go a long way, whether it's to help find translators, to help fund a trip to an outer island. Everything helps. I mahalo everybody for their support.
Yes, definitely go check out Anthony's page. I promise you will not be disappointed. Take it from me. I love this thing. So please help him out. Kavika.
Thank you.
If you want to contact me directly or follow me at Kavika Hoke on wherever you get on social media, I will gladly walk you through on how to take down the establishment every day. Check out Moku Moku at 808 Moku Moku, now streaming on Amazon Prime. But if you'd like to subvert the establishment and Jeff Bezos, you can go straight to 808mokumoku.com. You find it on Vimeo OTT and put in the code FREE99 and watch all 6 episodes for free right now. So just giving it away. All that Hawaiian love, just giving it away.
That's aloha right there. Do the free 99, but also mahalo nui. And then last but not least, Paki, where can everybody find you and your work?
We have our book, Mahalo Does Not Mean Trash, on Amazon and all of the other cool places. So take a look at it and enjoy it. It's a fun read for all the keiki out there.
Mahalo. So with that said, thank you all of you for joining us tonight. Another wonderful conversation that we could go on and on and on and on and on. But I have to be respectful of everybody's time. To our viewers who joined us, thank you guys so much. Please like, share, and subscribe to Moana Nui Podcast on YouTube. And thank you all for joining us. Until we see you all again, take care. Malama pono. Ahui ho.
Aloha.
We go.
So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will.
If this the land of the free, it was a freedom then. When they annexed Hawaii and called it Cedar Lands, without any type of payment and no signing off. Called themselves the Republic in 1894. 1.2 million acres overtaken from the Native Hawaiians. When they resisted, the West retaliated in violence and erasure. The Hawaiian language is banned as part of colonialism's plan to expand,
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe. As a part of their ongoing war with Asia, used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.
So if you put Hawaii in a perspective, well, Black and Asian history is interconnected. Considering the fight with the Pacific, then of course, versus Asia, they was treated as a middleman for war, but didn't let the Western colorism run its course, cause dark skin was a sign of dignity to core. The land was taken in the name of capitalism, when prior to it was an actual kingdom. Clap back at the system.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Multiple bombings of Kaho'olawe. As a part of their ongoing war with Asia, used it as a place for target practice. No consent or compensation. Colonizers call for annexation. No work out for all the locals. School will never let you know. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. So many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. Too many stories left to tell, even if we have to ourselves. Can't keep history on the shelf. If we won't tell it, we will. We will.